So you worked on your solo ideas and you can play them all in isolation, but for some reason, when you get going, they just don't flow. If this is happening, it's not because you need to practice the same idea another 1,000 times to really get them in your bones. It's because you don't know how to practice flow. So in this video, I'm going to give you an exercise that will directly practice flow so you can feel confident that when you get on stage, everything's going to come out naturally. So when we practice, we need to slow down and do tons and tons of detail. Things like prep strokes, things like what's the difference between my accents and taps? What is this sticking, right? And those things are all very like left brain, logical processes that you really need to calculate and figure out. And that kind of thinking is really slow and accurate. And it's kind of the opposite of the kind of thinking that you need to be in if you want to flow. Flow is right brain. Flow is like, just let whatever comes out come out. Intuition, blurry, big picture, zoomed out, not thinking, just creativity, autopilot, okay? And when we practice, we're practicing the thing we're practicing, but we're also practicing getting into that left brain state. So you have to actually take some time in your practice session to get into that right brain state, to get into that flow. And what you can feel like is like all that practice time that you put in analyzing things and getting really nitty-gritty on them, it can start to feel like a waste because nothing really counts if you get on stage and it doesn't flow, okay? And so that's why I like to think of something called thresholds, okay? So your threshold is how complex you can play without losing your flow, right? So you might be able to play an idea that is like this level of difficulty in isolation, just one bar at a time. But then when you try to put it in context, it's below this threshold, right? So you always want to stay below your flow threshold when you're performing so that everything sounds natural, because it doesn't matter how fancy an idea is if it doesn't flow. It kind of just doesn't count. It's like if you knew a really fancy word, but you pronounce it so wrong that nobody knows what you're saying, right? And so when we practice flow, we don't want to always be going for our most complex idea. I like to use what we call the Shire exercise, okay? And so it's called the Shire exercise. It's from Lord of the Rings, okay? And there's this part where Sam says to Frodo,
"If I take one more step, it'll be the farthest away from home I've ever been."
and that's where you want to practice flow. You don't want to go way too far, like something that's so complex. You want to take something and play something that's just one level of complexity harder than your natural flow. And what's going to happen is if you go a little bit further, then your level of flow, your threshold will raise, and then it'll raise a little bit, little by little by little. But if you just go all the way to Mordor, you might die. Okay, so that's how we want to practice flow. Let's get into the Shire exercise. So what you want to start with is something that you can obviously play with a natural flow, something that's too easy for you, so you can get the feeling of flow. So for me, I'm going to do 4 bars where I just play quarter notes. Easy, right? But everything came out in good time with a good touch. That's the 2 things I think about for flow. Because if something comes in with good time and a good touch, then it flows, right? It sounds natural. Okay, I'm going to make that a little bit more complex because that was pretty easy for me. I'm going to push that Shire one step further, okay? So I'm going to add drags to it this time, make it a little bit more complex. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, and... Okay, that worked out nicely. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some eighth notes to it. Okay, maybe some doubles, maybe some singles. We'll see what I play. Right? Oh no, I messed up my flow, right? Okay, I can play fancier stuff than that, but I'm just showing you here what to do when you get stuck. So you see that it's like I played some eighth note phrases and it overall was in time, but it sounded chunky and awkward. So what I would do is I would say, okay, what are the phrases that made me feel chunky and awkward? Let me go back a step and just hang out there. Like I think I played a phrase like this, where it's like a drag with some eighth notes and then the second one's a little faster. Okay, so let me just hang out there and see if I can make that comfortable. Right? You can see it's like 80% of what I played was natural stuff, and then I just added 20% of the harder stuff. Now I can start to add more of the hardest stuff. okay? And it starts to flow more naturally. This is the Shire exercise. You get it comfortable. You know, the Shire gets bigger. There's more of the world that you're comfortable flowing in, okay? Let's take it to the next level. I added some eighth note stuff. What if I add some triplet based stuff, okay? So I can go. All right, cool. That ended up flowing nicely for me. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to play continuous triplets and see if I can fill every single triplet while still flowing. I think I dropped one triplet in there. Let's do another one. There we go. That time I got it. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to push it even further. I'm going to try to play continuous 16th notes. Okay, boom. Now I'm going to push it even further. I'm going to switch between triplets and 16th notes. Continuous again. You can hear there, in one of the transitions, I was a little awkward. So I'm going to limit the transitions and see if I can make the one transition I do really smooth. Ah, I know what it was. It was because I was doing this inverted doubles. And it made it so it was a little bit of an awkward switch to get to the right hand again for the triplets. Okay, so maybe let's see if I can avoid that. A little bit better. I think I can get it even better. Right, there you go. So one transition I got. Let's see if I can transition more times. Pretty good. I think I got more. So you can see here, it's like I'm constantly interacting with my level of flow. I'm paying attention to flow. I'm not just thinking of the ideas. I'm thinking of which ideas get me out of flow and how can I set myself up so that I stay in flow. And a lot of us, we get so distracted with our idea that we just forget about our flow. And you just need to work this into your practice routine to where you're thinking about flow on a regular basis so that when you get on stage, you can access it. Now, there's a further level of this. You want to get even further into your intuition when you're performing, and I'm going to show you how to do that in just a second here. Before we do this, flow is just one thing you're going to need to practice as an improviser. I'm able to shift between these levels because I have vocabulary for all these different things, because I'm comfortable phrasing with all these different things. And if I went to go perform in a jam session, I would need to know not just these ideas and flow, I would need to know the tunes that people are playing and how to interact. So I can't cover all of that in this video. Otherwise, it would be like 27 hours long or something like that. But that is something I work on with my students at the jazz school, where I mentor people very closely on how to become a complete jazz musician. You can start playing with people. Okay? So if you're interested in that, click the link in the description. You can reach out and apply to be a mentorship student. Now, the next level of flow is getting totally into intuition mode. This is like the kind of intuition mode you're in when you're just talking with your friends. You're not thinking, you're just unfiltered. And I'm going to do that right now. I'm just going to try to completely flow. Flow is my main priority. I'm not even going to think about trying to play close to my threshold. I'm just going to kind of zone out and see if I can just play something that sounds natural. And if I've done good work pushing my flow threshold, then some of those ideas I worked on should come out. So let's see if that happens. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there you go. If you use the Shire exercise, your threshold will improve and your solos will flow, but then you're going to need to learn how to show up proper at a jam session. So click here to watch my full guide on how to become jam session ready.